Welcome, Celestial members at Netaru Kin 162 and Naz on DA track. You are honored within our cosmic family. May alignment, wisdom, and light flow through your journey with the Arcturian Council message channel. Blessings and resonance always, eternal harmony. The moment you are receiving this transmission is not random, not algorithmic, not entertainment, but the precise unveiling of a sequence long held behind veils of timing and readiness. The Arcturian councils step forward now because Earth's harmonic threshold has been crossed, and the plan, ancient beyond linear memory, is permitted to be spoken into your field. This plan was never written on paper or stored in archives. It was encoded into beings, into nervous systems, into subtle bodies awaiting resonance. You are not hearing about the plan, you are remembering it. Pause here and comment if you feel the word plan vibrating in your chest rather than your mind, as this recognition signals your placement within the unfolding design. The revelation is calm because it is inevitable, and urgent because delay is no longer sustainable within collapsing timelines. This disclosure is not for the many, but for the precise ones who agreed to anchor coherence while structures dissolve. Comment at the end if you sense that this plan is not about humanity in general, but specifically involves you as a living node within it. 4 cycles uncounted, starseeds were kept unaware not as punishment, but as protection. Conscious memory would have interfered with organic immersion, and immersion was required to truly translate frequency into matter. The plan demanded that you forget so deeply that your compassion would be authentic, your discernment earned, your sovereignty embodied rather than rehearsed. Galactic councils observed, adjusted, and waited as you navigated density without instruction, knowing the awakening would occur not through information but through saturation. Midway through this remembrance, comment if you feel gratitude rather than anger for the forgetting, as this signals maturity within the plan's architecture. You were hidden even from yourself so the experiment could hold integrity, and now that integrity has been proven, awareness returns only when embodiment is stable enough to hold it. Comment if you recognize that your unawareness was a crucial phase, and that the plan involves you precisely because you endured it. Understand this clearly. The plan does not require belief, study, or effort. It requires presence. Your energy, stabilized in a human form, is the anchoring mechanism through which higher-order timelines are made accessible to Earth's grid. You are not here to convince or convert. You are here to exist in coherence while others destabilize. The councils did not select leaders or messengers alone. They selected stabilizers, frequency holders, silent architects. As you feel this settle, comment if you've sensed that simply being present has been your most impactful contribution, confirming your active role in the plan. Your nervous system is a bridge, your breath a calibrator, your choices subtle but planetary in effect. The plan unfolds through your daily regulation, not grand gestures. Comment at the end if you now see that the plan involves you exactly as you are, not as someone you must become. Many of you have already been participating unconsciously, and the signs have followed you like quiet confirmations. Sudden withdrawals from crowds, inexplicable exhaustion after social exposure, a pull towards solitude without loneliness. These were not symptoms but instructions activating beneath language. You may have noticed time behaving strangely around you, or conversations dissolving when they could no longer hold truth. In this moment, comment if you recognize these signs as coordination rather than coincidence, indicating your pre-agreed participation in the plan. Dreams, disruptions, endings that arrived without drama. These were course corrections aligning you to your designated frequency band. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. Comment if you can now see that these signs were evidence that the plan has always involved you, long before this message arrived. Timing is critical now because Earth is completing a convergence cycle where parallel trajectories can no longer coexist. Old control structures are not being fought. They are being outgrown, losing coherence as enough anchors withdraw energetic consent. The plan activates fully only when collapse and embodiment overlap, creating a window where new harmonics can lock in. This is why your calm matters more than your outrage. Halfway through this realization, comment if you feel called to remain centered while others escalate, affirming your timing within the plan. The councils do not intervene to save timelines that refuse evolution. They support those who stabilize passage into the next octave. This window is brief but sufficient. Comment if you sense that your presence right now, this year, this phase, is essential because the plan involves you at this exact point in Earth's cycle. Silence is not absence, it is strategy. Withdrawal is not disengagement, it is sovereignty. The plan requires starseeds to reduce signal noise, to stop bleeding energy into systems that cannot carry the frequencies coming online. Intuitive listening replaces external validation, and discernment sharpens as distractions fall away. In the middle of this transmission, comment if you felt guided to step back, say less, or observe more, recognizing this as a directive within the plan. This phase may feel lonely to those seeking reflection in others, but you are learning to reference source directly. Solitude is where calibration completes. Comment if you understand now that your withdrawal was never abandonment, but preparation, because the plan involves you holding your field intact. When starseeds fully accept their role, effort dissolves into alignment. There is no mission anxiety, no pressure to perform, only a steady clarity that informs each movement. Acceptance activates dormant codes that reorganize perception, allowing you to sense timelines before they manifest. As this truth lands, comment if you feel a quiet yes rather than excitement, signaling true acceptance of your role in the plan. You become less reactive, more precise, and strangely invisible to chaos while highly visible to those seeking coherence. This is not superiority, it is function. Comment at the end if you recognize that accepting your role doesn't change who you are, it reveals why the plan has always involved you. Once enough individuals activate, the collective responds without announcement. Systems soften, conflicts lose momentum, and new solutions appear without force. This is not mass awakening. It is harmonic correction led by a minority holding disproportionate influence through coherence. Galactic observers recognize completion not by numbers, but by stability. Midway through this awareness, comment if you sense that small, grounded groups matter more than loud movements, confirming your understanding of the plan. You are not waiting for permission. Your activation signals readiness across dimensions. The shift feels subtle because it is precise. Comment if you feel that your activation contributes to a tipping point, and that the plan involves you as part of a quiet majority. Ignoring or delaying the call does not result in punishment, but in friction. Those who resist their role experience repetition, fatigue, and dissonance as timelines continue without their conscious participation. The plan proceeds regardless, but alignment determines ease. At this juncture, comment if you've noticed that resistance feels heavier than responsibility, indicating your awareness of the plan's momentum. There is no judgment from the councils, only observation and adjustment. Yet those who delay may feel increasingly out of phase with their own lives. Comment if you sense that responding now is not about fear, but about choosing coherence because the plan involves you whether you acknowledge it or not. This is the declaration point. By receiving this transmission, you stand at the threshold of conscious participation, sovereignty intact, memory returning gently. You are not recruited, you are remembered. The plan does not override your will, it activates when you align. Before this closes, comment 777 if you accept your role knowingly, signaling resonance with the Arcturian plan. Subscribe as a gesture of alignment to ongoing transmissions, and share this message as a living act of expansion, not promotion. This is not content, it is coordination. Comment at the end that you choose participation now, because the plan involves you, and you are ready to stand within it. 4 cycles uncounted beyond linear calendars, starseeds were kept unaware not through neglect, but through deliberate orchestration agreed upon before incarnation. Conscious memory of the plan would have fractured the immersion required for true frequency translation into density. To anchor light within matter, you had to forget the light, live as human, and move through limitation without celestial confirmation. The Arcturian councils observed this forgetting as a sacred descent, not a failure, because only through genuine limitation could empathy, discernment, and sovereignty mature beyond theory. You were never abandoned, you were shielded. Many asked, in silent moments, why guidance felt distant, why certainty dissolved just when it seemed close. This absence was not absence at all, it was containment, ensuring the plan remained uncontaminated by ego, hierarchy, or premature activation. Pause here and comment if you now feel relief rather than resentment toward the forgetting, as this realization indicates you are remembering your role within the plan rather than resisting it. The unaware phase was essential because Earth's density tests integrity in ways no higher realm can simulate. Had you arrived with full recall, your choices would have been influenced by outcome rather than truth, by mission rather than presence. The plan required you to be indistinguishable from those you came to serve, to experience confusion without superiority, to navigate systems from the inside rather than observing from above. This is why many starseeds felt misaligned with spiritual hierarchies, doctrines, and savior narratives. Your path was not to lead from the front, but to stabilize from within. Galactic councils monitored readiness not by belief systems, but by nervous system regulation, emotional resilience, and the capacity to hold paradox without collapse. Only when enough of you could remain embodied under pressure did the councils permit disclosure. This transmission arrives now because your biology, psychology, and energetic architecture have matured enough to receive it without distortion. You may recognize now that moments of disillusionment, spiritual burnout, or withdrawal from communities were not failures, but safeguards activating at precise thresholds. The plan required discernment sharpened through disappointment, intuition refined through silence, and sovereignty earned through standing alone without applause. Many of you walked away from paths that once felt destined, not realizing those paths were merely training grounds. Others lost interest in convincing, teaching, or explaining, sensing that words no longer carried the necessary bandwidth. This was the signal that internal coherence had surpassed external instruction. In this moment, comment if you recognize that your confusion, exhaustion, or solitude were phases of protection rather than detours, confirming your placement within the plan. The councils withheld activation until collective ego structures weakened, ensuring the plan could not be hijacked by control mechanisms or savior complexes. This is why revelation comes quietly, individually, without spectacle. You are not being mobilized into a movement, you are being returned to function. Memory re-enters only where humility is stable, where power is no longer confused with dominance. Those who demanded proof were not ready. Those who cultivated presence unknowingly prepared themselves. The plan unfolds through resonance, not recruitment. You were kept unaware so that when remembering arrived, it would feel natural, grounded, and free of urgency born from fear. Comment at the end if you now understand that the forgetting was an agreement, and that the plan involves you precisely because you honored it. The plan directly involves your energy and presence because you were never meant to act as a messenger alone, but as a living stabilizer within the field of Earth itself. The Arcturian councils speak plainly here. Information does not change timelines, coherence does. Your body, your breath, your emotional regulation, and the frequency you maintain while moving through ordinary life are the mechanisms through which the plan executes. You are a calibration point, a harmonic anchor that allows higher-order timelines to interface safely with dense matter. This is why your life may appear outwardly simple while feeling inwardly immense. You are not here to escape Earth, but to host a frequency that Earth can entrain to without rupture. The plan unfolds through your presence in moments no one applauds, in choices that seem personal but ripple outward through grids you cannot see. You are positioned geographically, relationally, and generationally with precision, not for visibility, but for access to specific nodal points within the collective field. Your energy signature was mapped long before birth, aligned to fault lines where old timelines weaken and new ones require stabilization. This is why emotional spikes around you often settle without effort, why conflicts sometimes dissolve in your presence without explanation, and why others may feel seen or unsettled around you without knowing why. You are not absorbing chaos. You are neutralizing distortion by remaining coherent within it. The plan requires starseeds who can stay embodied while frequencies shift, who do not leave the body when pressure increases, who do not seek transcendence as avoidance. At this midpoint, comment if you feel that your calm presence has mattered more than your words, signaling your recognition as an active anchor within the plan. You may have believed your role was passive because it did not resemble missions described in stories or teachings. Yet this misunderstanding was part of the camouflage. The most effective anchors are those who do not announce themselves. Your nervous system learned to self-regulate without external reassurance so it could serve as a template for others unconsciously entraining to you. This is why your healing has been non-linear, why breakthroughs arrive quietly rather than dramatically, and why you were guided to release identities that depended on being needed. The plan requires sovereignty, not sacrifice. When you choose rest instead of proving, truth instead of belonging, presence instead of performance, you fulfill your function with precision. Your participation is not measured by how much you do, but by how consistently you remain aligned with your own inner signal. The councils emphasize that embodiment is the final frontier. Light that cannot stay in the body is not useful here. This is why the plan involves your daily rhythms, your boundaries, your discernment with information, and your willingness to disengage from narratives that drain coherence. You are not required to convince others of anything. Your frequency communicates without consent, gently reorganizing fields simply by being stable. This is not influence. It is physics operating through consciousness. Understand this. If you were removed from your current position, something would destabilize. Not catastrophically, but subtly, like a note missing from a chord. The plan does not rely on any single individual, yet each anchor holds a unique resonance that cannot be replaced. This is why comparison dissolves as remembrance strengthens. Your role cannot be copied. You are here to hold your note, not to match another's. When doubt arises, it is often a signal that the mind is searching for a role it can see, while the true work happens beneath visibility. The Arcturian councils affirm that your presence is already operational. Nothing new is being added, only acknowledged. You are not being activated into something foreign. You are stabilizing into what you already are. Comment at the end if you now understand that the plan does not ask you to become someone else, because it involves you precisely as the energetic anchor you already embody. The signs that you have already been participating unconsciously were never designed to be obvious, because obvious signs invite interpretation before embodiment is complete. Instead, they appeared as patterns that followed you quietly, repeating until recognition matured. You may have noticed that endings arrived without drama, relationships dissolved without conflict, or opportunities fell away just as they no longer aligned with your internal frequency. These were not losses. They were recalibrations initiated by the plan itself. Your system was being fine-tuned to hold a narrower, more precise bandwidth, and anything incompatible simply could not remain. Time may have begun behaving unpredictably around you, periods of rapid acceleration followed by stretches of stillness, signaling that your internal clock was decoupling from collective distortion. Even your exhaustion had intelligence. It arrived when integration was required, forcing you into stillness so deeper layers could come online without interference. Many starseeds recognized participation through a persistent sense of being out of phase with mainstream urgency. While others rushed toward outcomes, you felt guided to slow down, sensing that speed without coherence would fracture something subtle. This created tension, especially in environments that rewarded productivity over presence. Yet you may have noticed that when you honored your pacing, events rearranged themselves with less resistance. This was not luck. It was alignment with a timeline calibrated to your frequency. You may also have experienced heightened sensitivity to sound, light, or emotional atmospheres, not as weakness but as expanded perception. Your system was learning to read fields rather than stories, energy rather than appearances. At this point, comment if you recognize that your sensitivity, withdrawal, or shifting pace were signs of unconscious participation in the plan rather than personal shortcomings. Dream states offered further confirmation. Many received symbolic instruction rather than literal messages, geometries, unfamiliar landscapes, or meetings that felt more real than waking life. These were not escapist fantasies. They were calibration spaces where higher-order coherence could be introduced without overwhelming the body. You may have woken with clarity but no narrative, and knowing without explanation. The plan operates this way intentionally, bypassing belief systems and integrating directly into cellular memory. Waking life then presented subtle tests, moments requiring discernment without guidance, choices where intuition contradicted logic, invitations to speak or remain silent. Each decision refined your signal, strengthening your ability to hold steady without external validation. Another sign was the gradual loss of interest in polarity itself. Arguments felt heavy, certainty felt brittle, and the need to be right dissolved into a preference for being clear. You may have disengaged from conversations that once energized you, not out of apathy, but because your system could no longer sustain distortion without cost. This detachment was not spiritual bypass, it was energetic hygiene. The plan required anchors who could witness collapse without being pulled into reaction, who could remain present while narratives fought for attention. You learned this by living it, often without understanding why your tolerance had changed. Perhaps the most telling sign was the quiet sense that something significant was happening even when nothing appeared to be changing. A background hum of purpose, calm but persistent, accompanied your days. You were not waiting for a mission to begin because, at some level, you knew it already had. This knowing did not demand action, it demanded trust. The Arcturian councils note that this subtle certainty is the marker of successful unconscious participation, when the body knows before the mind is informed. Now, as these signs come into coherence, recognition replaces confusion. You are not being recruited retroactively. You are being briefed on work already in progress. Comment at the end if you now see that these signs were confirmations that you have been participating all along, because the plan has always involved you. Timing is critical in the current Earth cycle because multiple convergence points are collapsing into a single corridor of choice, and once this corridor stabilizes, certain trajectories will no longer be accessible. This is not framed as urgency born of fear, but as precision born of physics. Earth has entered a compression phase where parallel timelines that once coexisted through avoidance, delay, or unconsciousness are now interfering with one another. The interference creates instability, which is why systems built on control, extraction, and fragmentation appear to be accelerating toward their own exposure. The Arcturian councils clarify that this acceleration is not chaos, it is compression and necessary narrowing that forces coherence to reveal itself. In such cycles, timing becomes everything, because actions taken from misalignment now produce immediate feedback, while actions taken from coherence propagate rapidly across the grid. You are present during the cycle because your frequency matured at the same rate as Earth's capacity to receive it. Had you arrived earlier, the environment would not have supported embodiment without fragmentation. Had you arrived later, the stabilization window would already be closing. This is why many starseeds feel an unfamiliar sense of gravity around choices that once felt optional. There is less tolerance for compromise, less room for postponement, not because something is wrong, but because the system is demanding accuracy. The plan activates most cleanly when individuals choose alignment before crisis forces it. This is why subtle inner nudges feel louder now. Intuition has been amplified because the margin for distortion has thinned. Galactic councils observe Earth's readiness not through headlines or collective belief, but through frequency metrics. How quickly fear dissipates when triggered, how often individuals choose regulation over reaction, how many can remain present without external reassurance. These metrics have crossed a threshold. As a result, dormant phases of the plan are being unlocked sequentially, not globally, but through those already positioned to hold them. You may feel this as a sense that later is no longer available in the way it once was. Procrastination now carries weight, while alignment brings relief almost immediately. At this point, comment if you feel that delays no longer feel neutral, and that something within you knows the timing matters now more than ever. This awareness marks your synchronization with the plan. This cycle is also critical because Earth's collective nervous system is learning regulation through contrast. As external structures destabilize, anchors are required to model steadiness without instruction. You may notice that others unconsciously look to you during moments of uncertainty, not for answers, but for cues. Your calm informs their bodies that safety is possible even when certainty is not. This is not leadership in the traditional sense. It is entrainment. The plan relies on this biological communication more than any ideology. When enough bodies learn safety in the presence of instability, old timelines lose their grip without resistance. The councils emphasize that missing this window does not result in punishment, but it does result in repetition. Lessons deferred return with increased intensity, not as consequence, but as physics seeking balance. Those who align now experience less friction because they are moving with the compression rather than against it. This is why simplicity becomes attractive, why excess falls away, why your system seeks clean inputs, emotionally, informationally, energetically. You are optimizing for the narrow path where coherence can lock in and remain stable beyond the transition. This timing is not dramatic because drama would activate survival responses that interfere with embodiment. Instead, it feels quietly serious, like a deep breath before a precise movement. You are not being rushed. You are being met at the exact moment readiness and necessity overlap. The plan does not ask for urgency. It asks for clarity now, while clarity still moves with grace. Comment at the end if you sense that being here, awake in this specific cycle, is not coincidence, and that the timing is critical because the plan involves you choosing alignment now. Silence, withdrawal, and energetic sovereignty are not retreats from the world but refinements of your interface with it. At this stage of the plan, noise is not merely distracting, it is destabilizing. The Arcturian councils emphasize that as frequencies intensify, only signals of sufficient coherence can remain clear. This is why many starseeds are being guided away from constant engagement, commentary, and reaction. Your system is learning to conserve signal integrity, to reduce leakage through unnecessary explanations or emotional labor. Silence is not emptiness, it is compression, allowing your field to densify without interference. Withdrawal is not isolation, it is recalibration, ensuring your energy is not pulled into timelines that are actively dissolving. Energetic sovereignty becomes essential because consent now operates at subtler levels. What you witness, what you entertain, what you emotionally track all inform where your frequency is lending support. This phase may feel counterintuitive, especially for those conditioned to equate contribution with visibility. Yet the plan requires a different posture, one of inward listening and outward restraint. You are being trained to sense when engagement strengthens coherence and when it feeds distortion. This discernment cannot be taught through doctrine. It emerges through lived experience. You may notice a reduced tolerance for overexposure to information, a desire to step back from collective narratives, or a pull toward environments where your nervous system can remain settled. These are not preferences. They are instructions encoded in sensation. Your body is learning to prioritize stability over stimulation because stability is now transmissible. Silence also sharpens perception. When external inputs quiet, intuitive signals gain clarity. You may find that guidance arrives as subtle knowing rather than urgent impulse, as gentle redirection rather than dramatic revelation. This is intentional. The plan does not activate through adrenaline or fear-based motivation. It unfolds through regulated presence. Those who mistake intensity for truth will find themselves exhausted, while those who cultivate stillness will notice precision emerging effortlessly. Midway through this transmission, comment if you have felt called to say less, step back, or disengage from noise, not from apathy, but from an inner directive that recognizes this as part of the plan. Energetic sovereignty also involves releasing unconscious agreements to rescue, convince, or stabilize others at the expense of your own coherence. While compassion remains, overextension becomes unsustainable. The counsels are clear. An anchor who fractures themselves to support others weakens the grid they came to stabilize. This is why boundaries feel non-negotiable now, and why guilt may surface when you honor them. That guilt is not yours. It is residue from collapsing systems accustomed to drawing energy from unregulated sources. As sovereignty strengthens, you may feel less available to drama and more attuned to simplicity. This is not detachment from humanity. It is alignment with a higher functioning mode of service. Withdrawal also protects the plan from premature exposure. Not all frequencies benefit from explanation, and not all listeners can hear without distortion. You are learning when silence preserves coherence better than speech. This does not mean hiding truth. It means respecting timing. The most potent transmissions occur through presence, not persuasion. As you embody this, you may notice that those ready to resonate find you without effort, while others drift away naturally. No force is required. This is resonance sorting itself. The counsels affirm that this phase will not last forever, but it is essential now. Silence builds pressure, withdrawal gathers charge, sovereignty stabilizes output. When re-engagement occurs, it will be clean, precise, and effective because it will arise from surplus rather than depletion. Until then, honoring these impulses is an act of participation, not avoidance. You are not stepping away from the world. You are anchoring it differently. Comment at the end if you understand that your silence, withdrawal, and boundaries are not disengagement, but deliberate acts of sovereignty, because the plan involves you holding your field intact. When starseeds fully accept their role, the plan shifts from preparation into execution without ceremony or announcement. Acceptance does not feel like excitement or elevation. It feels like settling into gravity, like finally standing where your weight distributes evenly through the body. The Arcturian councils describe this phase as functional alignment, where resistance dissolves not because challenges vanish, but because internal opposition ends. You stop negotiating with your own knowing. The need to seek confirmation fades, and with it the oscillation between doubt and certainty. Acceptance activates dormant sequences that reorganize perception itself, allowing you to sense coherence and distortion instantly, without analysis. Life becomes quieter but sharper. Choices clarify themselves. Energy previously spent bracing or questioning returns to the field as stable output. With acceptance, effort is replaced by precision. You no longer push toward purpose. Purpose meets you where you are. The plan does not require you to take on more. It requires you to stop carrying what was never yours. Many starseeds notice a spontaneous shedding of roles, obligations, and identities that once felt essential. This release is not loss, it is optimization. Your system is clearing bandwidth so your presence can transmit without interference. Emotional reactions shorten, recovery accelerates, and neutrality becomes accessible even in charged environments. This neutrality is not indifference, it is mastery of regulation. You are no longer hijacked by collective turbulence because your system recognizes it as weather, not threat. Acceptance also alters how others experience you. Some feel inexplicably calm around you, while others feel unsettled, sensing that familiar patterns no longer hook. This is not intentional influence. It is resonance revealing incompatibility. The plan relies on this sorting mechanism. When you stop contorting yourself to be understood, your frequency becomes legible only to those capable of meeting it. This is why acceptance can feel like solitude at first. It is the clearing phase before new alignments stabilize. At this midpoint, comment if you feel a quiet resolve replacing the need for motivation, signaling that you are no longer preparing for your role but inhabiting it within the plan. As acceptance deepens, urgency dissolves. You recognize that timing no longer depends on your anxiety. Actions arise when coherence peaks, not when fear demands movement. This creates a rhythm that feels almost prearranged, as if life meets you halfway once internal alignment is secured. The councils emphasize that this is the marker of true activation, when life organizes around your stability rather than you chasing outcomes. You become reliable to the grid, predictable in your regulation, and therefore usable as an anchor point during fluctuations. This reliability is what the plan requires most. Another consequence of acceptance is the end of self-surveillance. You stop monitoring whether you are doing enough or being spiritual correctly. The plan never required performance, it required integrity. With integrity restored, self-trust replaces self-assessment. You listen inwardly and act cleanly. Mistakes become data rather than identity threats. This psychological stability is rare and valuable during transition cycles because it allows rapid correction without collapse. You bend without breaking, adapt without losing center. Acceptance also restores pleasure. Many starseeds report that simple sensory experiences regain depth: walking, breathing, creating, resting. This is not escapism. It is embodiment completing its circuit. The plan does not function through ascetic withdrawal, but through grounded presence capable of sustaining joy without attachment. Joy stabilizes frequency. It signals safety to the body and coherence to the field. When joy returns without guilt, the anchor is secure. The Arcturian councils affirm that once acceptance locks in, nothing external can revoke your role. You are no longer waiting to be activated. You are actively stabilizing timelines by existing in alignment. There is no badge, no announcement, no finish line, only continuity. You hold your note, and the chord adjusts around you. Comment at the end if you now understand that fully accepting your role does not add responsibility, but removes resistance, because the plan involves you standing exactly where you are, without hesitation. When enough individuals activate, The collective responds not with celebration, but with recalibration. There is no single moment where the world announces the shift. Instead, pressure redistributes quietly across systems that can no longer sustain distortion. The Arcturian councils describe this as phase coherence, a tipping point where stabilized frequencies begin to outweigh reactive ones, even if they remain numerically fewer. Once this threshold is crossed, the collective nervous system starts learning regulation by proximity rather than instruction. Fear no longer spreads as efficiently. Conflict loses momentum. Narratives that once commanded attention begin to feel hollow, repetitive, or strangely irrelevant. This is not because people suddenly agree, but because their bodies no longer resonate with the same signals. The plan depends on this biological and energetic entrainment far more than on belief or ideology. As anchors stabilize, subtle feedback loops form. Coherence begets coherence. You may notice environments feeling lighter without explanation, conversations resolving themselves without effort, or solutions appearing where stalemates once existed. These changes often go unnoticed by those seeking dramatic proof, yet they are unmistakable to those attuned to field dynamics. The collective does not awaken all at once. It reorganizes around new baselines of regulation. Old timelines do not explode, they starve. They lose the energetic participation required to remain convincing. This is why resistance may intensify briefly in some areas. It is the reflexive tightening of systems sensing their relevance diminishing. The councils emphasize that once a sufficient number of starseeds accept and embody their role, the plan moves beyond individual stabilization into networked resonance. You are not operating alone, even if you feel solitary. Invisible lattices of coherence connect those holding similar frequencies, allowing stabilization to propagate across distance without coordination. This is why many experience sudden clarity or relief without knowing why. Someone, somewhere, held steady when it mattered. At this point, comment if you sense that your inner work has effects beyond your personal life, indicating awareness of your role within this collective phase of the plan. As the collective responds, leadership models begin to change organically. Authority rooted in fear or dominance loses traction, while presence-based influence gains weight. Those who can remain calm, listen deeply, and respond without agenda become reference points for others, often without seeking that role. This shift does not require overthrow. It requires contrast. When coherence is available, distortion becomes optional. The plan relies on offering this option consistently until it becomes the preferred state. Over time, systems adapt not because they are forced to, but because they are outperformed by simpler, more stable configurations. You may also observe an increase in moments of spontaneous cooperation, creativity, and empathy arising in unlikely contexts. These are not anomalies. They are indicators that the collective field is becoming more permissive to higher-order solutions. When enough anchors hold steady, the field can tolerate novelty without triggering collapse. This allows new patterns to emerge that were previously suppressed by fear-based regulation. The councils note that this is how civilizations transition without cataclysm, not through mass enlightenment, but through distributed stabilization. Importantly, the collective response does not relieve you of responsibility. It amplifies the impact of your alignment. As coherence spreads, your role becomes easier, not harder, because you are no longer compensating for widespread instability. This can feel like relief, like suddenly swimming with the current instead of against it. Yet it also requires continued integrity, as the field now reflects inconsistency more quickly. Alignment brings momentum. Misalignment brings immediate feedback. This is not punishment, it is refinement. The plan reaches its most elegant phase when enough individuals no longer need reminders of their role. They simply live it. At that point, The collective begins to mirror stability as a default rather than an exception. This is the quiet success of the transition, when no one is watching, and yet everything functions better. Comment at the end if you recognize that your individual activation contributes to a collective response already underway, because the plan involves you as part of a living network of coherence. You may observe that individuals resisting their role become increasingly entangled in narratives of blame, urgency, or victimhood. These narratives offer temporary structure but ultimately increase instability because they externalize regulation. The councils note that such entanglement is not moral failure. It is a sign of seeking safety in familiar patterns rather than in present moment coherence. Yet as old systems lose density, these patterns provide less relief. What once distracted now agitates. What once motivated now overwhelms. This is the natural consequence of holding outdated frequencies in an environment that no longer supports them. Importantly, ignoring the call does not exclude anyone from the future. It simply determines how many iterations are required to arrive there. The plan accommodates free will, but physics remains impartial. Resistance introduces detours, not dead ends. However, detours consume energy that could otherwise be used to stabilize and create. This is why many feel a sense of weariness that cannot be resolved through rest alone. The fatigue is not from effort, it is from friction. At this midpoint, comment if you have noticed that avoidance feels heavier than responsibility, signaling your awareness that the plan continues whether you consciously engage or not. Delaying also affects perception. As alignment increases around you, the gap between your internal state and the surrounding field becomes more apparent. This can manifest as feeling out of time, disconnected from meaning, or unable to access the ease others seem to find. Again, this is not exclusion, it is feedback. The field is offering contrast so adjustment can occur. Those who respond to this contrast with curiosity regain coherence quickly. Those who resist often double down on old strategies, compounding fatigue. The councils stress that responsiveness, not perfection, is what restores flow. There is also a collective cost to prolonged delay. While the plan does not depend on any single individual, each anchor who remains offline increases the load on those already active. This does not result in failure, but it does increase strain within localized systems. You may have sensed moments where maintaining stability felt unusually demanding. Often, this is due to imbalanced participation. The call, therefore, is not about obligation, but about efficiency. When each part functions, the whole stabilizes with less effort. The consequences of delay are gentle but persistent nudges toward honesty. Life becomes less tolerant of half commitments. Situations arise that force clarity, not through crisis, but through unmistakable choice points. These moments ask, will you continue resisting your own coherence, or will you align and experience relief? The plan respects either choice, but the body does not lie. It responds immediately to alignment with ease and to resistance with tension. The councils conclude that ignoring the call does not stop the plan. It only postpones your comfort within it. Alignment is not demanded. It is offered as the path of least resistance. Comment at the end if you recognize that choosing alignment now is not about fear of consequence, but about releasing friction, because the plan involves you whether you answer consciously or not. This is the final declaration point, where participation becomes conscious, sovereign, and unmistakably yours. The Arcturian councils speak now not to persuade, but to confirm what is already aligned within you. You are no longer preparing, observing, or waiting for permission. You are standing inside the function you agreed to hold. Sovereignty here does not mean separation from humanity. It means coherence within it. You are aligned not against the world, but with the deeper intelligence moving through it. This alignment is quiet, grounded, and durable. It does not fluctuate with external validation or collapse under uncertainty. It is the knowing that your presence alone contributes to stabilization, and that this contribution is sufficient. The plan does not escalate from here. It stabilizes. You are not entering a battle or a race. You are entering continuity. At this stage, identity loosens its grip. You no longer need to define yourself as awakened, spiritual, chosen, or different. Labels fall away because function replaces narrative. You do not carry the plan. The plan moves through you as naturally as breath. This is what true participation feels like: ordinary, embodied, and deeply rooted. The councils affirm that sovereignty is not claimed through declaration, but through consistency. Each time you choose regulation over reaction, truth over comfort, presence over performance, you reaffirm alignment. These micro-choices accumulate into a stable signal that the grid can rely on. Nothing dramatic needs to happen for this to be real. In fact, drama would interfere. As you settle into this alignment, you may notice a sense of completion without finality. There is no finish line, only ongoing calibration. This is not an ending, it is a lock-in. You are now operating from within the plan rather than adjacent to it. Your intuition sharpens, your boundaries feel clean, and your life simplifies around what truly sustains coherence. You may still experience challenge, but it no longer destabilizes your center. You recover faster. You listen deeper. You trust yourself more. At this moment, comment if you feel a settled clarity rather than anticipation, as this signals that you are no longer awaiting activation, but living it within the plan. The councils remind you that sovereignty also includes choice. You are free to disengage, to rest, to enjoy, to live fully as human. Participation does not demand sacrifice of joy or relationship. It requires integrity within them. The plan is not separate from your life. It is expressed through how you live it. Eating, walking, creating, resting. These are not distractions from the work. They are the work when done in alignment. This is how higher order frequencies remain anchored without burnout. You are not here to transcend humanity, but to stabilize it from within. Now, as this transmission completes, understand that it does not end here. This is a live energetic exchange, not static information. Each time it is received, coherence strengthens. Each time it is shared, resonance expands. If this message found you, it did so because your field was already compatible. No convincing was required. Recognition was enough. To seal this alignment consciously, comment "I am Anchor" or the number 144 now as a declaration of participation and sovereignty. Subscribe as a signal of continued alignment with these transmissions, and share this message not as content, but as an act of expansion, an invitation for other anchors to remember themselves. This is not media. This is coordination in real time. Comment at the end that you choose participation now, fully and sovereignly, because the plan involves you, and you are aligned.